Welcome everybody back to our fourth and last series of Food as Medicine, and Merry Christmas. I made this little backdrop for you today. And as we are getting closer to the holidays, specifically the Christmas and New Year holidays, I want to spend the last video of this series talking directly about ultra-processed foods. So, this is a fascinating topic from where we began and now where we've ended. We have gone through the fad diets of the 1980s and 90s, talked about how we can compare those to animal-based and carnivore-based diets of today. Are they a fad? Are they the way forward, if you will, almost as if we're going back? Talking about seed oils and elimination of those seed oils, talking about putting on muscle and overall health for men over 40. And then today, like I said, ultra processing of our foods have affected us all, specifically those of us kiddos who grew up in the mid 1980s and 1990s. They are impacting our health more, I think, than what we realize. So today I have spent the time taking one study. The rest of these I've put our journal entries in the description, but I wanted to spend time with one particular study that looked at ultra processing of food across different nations, not just the United States, and whether or not the nutrients in these foods are contributing to that overall topic of obesity and metabolic health. And we've spent many minutes over the last 3 videos talking about main diseases related directly back to inflammation. And so that's what we're going to kind of finalize and finish up today. So let's get into these findings and what it means for our diets and hopefully our future better health, and maybe even taking this video and using it as a plan for us to move forward with healthier decisions in 2025. So to start, let's clarify what ultra-processed really means. Ultra-processed foods go beyond basic processing. These are products that are industrially manufactured, often with added fats, certainly sugars, salt, and even artificial ingredients. Think of your sugary cereals, your soda, your packaged snacks, and your frozen meals. So as we move into the Christmas season, we're trying to help you make better choices about what we are going to eat when surrounded by family and friends for the holidays. Most of these foods are designed to be convenient, tasty, and ready to eat, but they come with some very extreme hidden downsides. And just to be clear, guys, we have all been through this. I will tell you, I think as a product of our generation, so to speak, growing up in the 80s and 90s with 2 parents that were working full-time 5 days a week, it did become something of convenience. Now, my mother typically would cook our food for dinner throughout the week. However, what we took, if we took lunch to school, or if we ate in the school, was certainly a different type of food. And then, of course, the snacks became something that was a go-to convenience. And now we can start talking about, our Gushers. I remember Gushers, fruit tape or fruit roll-ups. We could go on and on. Our Dunkaroos, I won't get into all that. But at the time, I think our parents simply didn't understand because, again, how we've talked before, marketing played a key role in how this food was brought to the television and into our homes. And I think it's extremely important to remember, without the technology and the research at the time, previous generations could put trust in, we think, into what TV and the government was showing us. And so now, with technology at our hands, it is very easy to, I would say, really figure out what are in these foods. So I'm going to be reading a little bit when we're talking about this study and talking about what the key findings are. Now, This study specifically came from the current Obesity Report Journal in December 6th of 2017. There are newer studies, but there are not newer studies that go into the depth of what this one did. So what did the study reveal? Researchers reviewed various studies across multiple countries, and that's key because when we put together an observational study that is a conglomerate of other studies, it allows us to have more data points, which should, in the hopes of giving us more validity, should be a heftier, if you will, type of study, especially when you consider that it's throughout different countries as well. So US to Brazil consistently found that higher consumption of these ultra-processed foods were linked to increased obesity rates. And that may be a no-brainer to some, but you have to realize we're not just talking about the sugar-full gushers. We're also talking about being able to look at maybe some frozen foods that claim on the front that they are keto. Kodiak cakes, that brand is particularly interesting to me because the foods that they put out, you have to be extremely choosy about. A keto pancake doesn't really exist. Now, an animal-based that you can make in your home with normal ingredients could. Same with protein, using the label of a high protein content on your bar. There are very loose specifics and rules that the FDA and the USDA require for you to label something as high protein. It only has to have 10 grams of protein, and no amount of sugar is limited in those bars. And so again, it's one of those things that looking at the front of the box over the course of the 1980s and 90s, which is where our parents looked, now is not good enough. We have to turn it over and not only look at the nutritional facts now, we also have to look at the ingredients and figure out what in there is real and what is not. So you have to realize when we're talking about this, it may seem like a no-brainer, but think about those foods that you're picking up and thinking on the label that it's not that bad, or that we are still believing on what's on the front of that box written out by those companies. Study also connected ultra-processed foods with other metabolic issues, which we can assume there, beyond obesity. Higher fasting glucose levels, metabolic syndromes, elevated LDL levels, which of course in turn is going to raise hypertension levels too. So now we're talking about multiple organ systems being affected over this bulk-laced processed foods. The unfortunate thing is, in this country specifically, typically ultra-processing means a lower cost. So when we look at cost of living and we look at making those choices, let's take convenience out of the way, but just looking at what's in the stores and what we can pick up that intend to be at a lower price point, we may not always think about whether or not it's that good or that bad for us because of price. And that is a product of this country. I can tell you, having visited other countries, and I'm sure you guys can relate to this as well, you're actually paying a premium to get the ultra-processed foods in other countries. I know when we were in South America, it would tell you on the front of the box in big bold letters, this is excess sugar, this is excess sodium, this is ultra-processed. It's a warning on the front label. That's not required here in this country. And so we have to be vigilant, we have to be particular when we're choosing what we are eating, and I wish health was promoted with cost point in this situation. So, interestingly, while these associations were clear, it wasn't always obvious whether it's the food nutrient content, like the sugar and the unhealthy fat, or the processing itself. And again, you're skirting lines here because we've already talked about our omega-3s and our omega-6s and how those are processed and broken down in the body, and oxidative stress. All of that is continuing with what we're talking about now. Anything that we put into our body that is fake requires our body to work harder than it needs to which means it's going to bring about more stress. And part of that is oxidative. We have to have oxygen to help us process these things inside our body. So, why ultra-processed foods contribute to health issues? This study suggests several reasons why foods contribute to weight gain and obesity, and it's not just about calorie, okay? First, they are highly palatable and designed to be easily consumed. I would even argue overconsumption is encouraged. When you see on the front that it tells you only blah, 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 whether it's calorie, whether it's fat, or promotes a high protein, when you really look at the serving size, some of the facts on the front of that label go away when you realize what you are actually eating and the amount that you are eating. So this highly palatable simply means what they have done is chemically altered some sweeteners to make your brain, your taste buds respond favorably and quicker than what it would if it was non-sugar or low carbohydrate type of foods. You're not going to get the same response of eating that first bite of egg as you would eating that first bite of cookie. You're just not. And our brain knows that, and so do the food companies. On top of that, they have a low satiety level, which means you're going to be hungry faster. There is a reason why you want to eat more food after going and stuffing yourself with takeout Chinese food, and it is because the MSG and the sugar content in that orange chicken, General Tso's chicken, whatever chicken it is, will literally burn faster in your stomach and create hunger quicker. So it's going to be much easier to overeat. All right, they often have high energy densities, okay? That means that you get more calorie, but with less volume. That's not a good thing. Think chips and candy bar versus fruit, and see which one's going to make you hit that pleasure center in your brain faster for a bigger amount of time. You're not going to sit down and eat 4 apples in a row, I don't think. I once followed a guy that ate 20 to 30 bananas a day. But you might sit down and eat 20 to 30 chips or 2 to 3 candy bars. Ultra-processed foods are also frequently marketed as larger portion sizes. That's interesting too. And everywhere from supermarkets to gas stations, they are found. So it's hard to avoid. Can I tell you how many road trips Jules and I have been on? We're going in, we're trying to find a good beef jerky, just a good beef jerky, sometimes even a beef jerky, or a hard-boiled egg, right? Or some string cheese, even though it's overpriced and individually packaged, something. And it's hard. It's hard to do that. It's especially hard to do that with just a roadside gas station. You're not seeking out Buc-ee's or QT's and your nicer truck, I'll say larger truck stops, if you will. So, the implication here. What does it mean for our eating habits? And that's what's important. Study points to the importance of reducing our intake, right? Okay, that's one thing, but it's not going to stop there. Instead of focusing on cutting calories, and I think that has been the narrative to push for probably close to as old as I am, calorie intake, while it is important, that whole 2,000 calorie thing in the food pyramid was absolute crap. It was another marketing ploy. Individual bodies require individual caloric intake and burn depending upon your activity level and your metabolic rate. So, we need to go back to whole foods that have minimally processing in them and have a bigger density to them to make us feel fuller longer. And the bigger density I mean here is not volume, but protein level, and then fat level, and lastly, you take consideration of carbohydrate level. So it also encourages mindful eating, this study does, to take the time to prepare it. the brain is weird. You can actively, when you consciously become aware at a certain age, you can actively overwrite some brain processes. So studies have found that taking the time to walk into the kitchen, to prepare your food, and to make your food is going to lower your level of hunger, and it's also going to help you eat slower, which is going to make you feel fuller for longer. But again, it's one of those things that you have to retrain your brain with, thinking, actively thinking, and making good choices. So, finally, the study reinforces a growing idea in nutrition. Food quality matters, not just calorie counting. I sit down with a pound of beef. It may not be fun every single day. It's not fun cooking it every day. But when you decide that food becomes secondary in your life and not your primary enjoyment, I can stuff the pound of beef in. Now, it's about 1,000 calories. It's not the only thing that I've eaten in a day. Certainly not the only thing I've eaten in a day. But I stopped counting calories when we switched over and made some conscious decisions about what we were going to eat, what we were not going to eat, and what we were going to keep in the house. For me, that's a biggie. If it's not in the house, I won't think about it. If it is in the house, sometimes, used to, it was all the time, sometimes it still gets to me. But again, you've got to override that. How do you override that? Well, it could be, I've eaten so many string cheeses in a day, it's ridiculous. But it could be a small snack like string cheese. Also love to have apples on hand. I don't do bananas. There's a different study we won't talk about with bananas and using bananas and what happens when you eat them and versus what happens when you blend them. We've found a difference there, and same with most fruits. But don't really keep berries anymore because antioxidants aren't an issue. You find out red meat will help you with that. Certainly help you with that, with the antioxidants. What are other snacks? I always have other blocks of cheese in case I don't want a string cheese. I eat blocks of 8-ounce raw cheese like apples sometimes. Pork rinds. Again, you know what's interesting about pork rinds is on the very front, large, bold letters, the good pork rinds, it says not a significant source of protein. You turn it over, full bag, I think has 5 portions in it. It's like eating air. I can eat a bag in 15 minutes. But I believe there's 5 portions, and each portion has 9-ish grams of protein in it. So it's insane to me that on the front of the bag of a pork rind that has pork skin fried out in pork fat, that's all, sea salt maybe, it's all we look for, tells me it's not a significant amount of protein. That's not a processed food, not the kind we get. And yet you're allowed to put 30 different ingredients into a candy bar that you label as a high protein bar and get to put high protein on the front of the box. If that doesn't show you what the motive here, I'm not really sure what will. But the motives are certainly questionable, keeping us under lock and key with our nutrition. So we're trying to make changes. I'm trying to help the audience that might not have been able to look this up or care to want to do this, but maybe make changes after the first of the year. What can we do, right? So in conclusion, while this study underscores the link between ultra-processed foods and obesity and metabolic disease and increased levels of hypertension, it does highlight, as always, that I have told you, certainly over these last 3 videos, and now the 4th, more research is always needed, welcomed, and appreciated. Specifically, scientists in this study want to study how much of this impact is due to nutrient content versus the actual processing in the industry. And where do we go from there? That's what they want to do. They have not published that study yet. So if they ever do, I will certainly come back and let you know and put the link in it in the description. But for now, right? We can take away a simple, yet what I think is a powerful message, reducing the ultra-processed foods. It's a direct link to better health outcomes. It is, and we've preached that in the hospital for years and years. We need to be preaching it on the streets every day. Better health outcomes. The way to start is small, right? Don't buy the frozen packaged foods or the packaged meats. Simply take the time if you can. And again, I know not everyone can. I can't every day either, but if you can take the time to cook the ham, to eat the ham, it just says ham and water, or any other type of pork or beef, you're going to be better off at the end of the day than going and getting the cheese slices or the packaged meats or the breads. Making sourdough is amazing. Homemade bread, homemade sourdough bread is amazing. It doesn't attack the gut in the same way. Buying packaged bread does. So small changes. And as this is the Christmas season, and as I know that you cannot control what family members bring, we certainly can, to the table. You can control what you take in. And while I will tell you, and I will be the first to admit that not every day is a great day, not every day has only whole foods, the small changes slowly become bigger changes as we retrain the brain and we bring new neuron pathways into that brain to make you at least second guess. Maybe you still choose it for a while, but you at least second guess and you know, will this lead to inflammation? And again, the unfortunate thing is, price point is a big deal, certainly now more than ever. So looking for simple things, looking for easy things, like an egg, if they ever come down in cost, right, are going to be bigger deals as we start the new year. So thank you as always for joining me into this deep dive, this one particular study. I know that the holidays are the best times and the worst times when it comes to food choice, which is why I wanted to do the conclusion of this series on today. So thank you as always. Please let me know if you have questions, you have comments, do your own research. The link will be below. They'll have more references in it for other studies to look at. But as we start January 2025, always with our carnivore month, I thought this was appropriate now. So I would love to know what your first goal is to swap out and for what. Small changes can lead to big results. Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy holidays. Whatever you're celebrating. I hope your family are safe. I hope you have a great time. I'll see you back in another video very soon.